Let's take a journey into the dark and divine. Encounter demons of every shape and size, from the classic horrors of folklore to modern fiction's original, terrifying creations. Witness the monsters born of cultural mythology, from the ghastly ghouls of Eastern tradition to the bloodthirsty beasts of Western legend. The beauties and horrors of legends, those that live within us. Welcome to Myth and Lores, a journey into the dark and divine. Without further ado, let's jump into another lore. Vampires are among the most enduring creatures in folklore, mythology, and popular culture. Their origins span various cultures, with each interpreting the vampire's nature and behavior in distinct ways. Over the centuries, the myth has evolved into the modern depictions we recognize today. But at its core, the vampire legend taps into deep fears about death, the afterlife, and the unknown. Ancient and regional origins. Mesopotamian mythology. The earliest vampire-like entities come from Mesopotamian myths, particularly the Edemu or Utuku. These were restless spirits of the dead who wandered the earth, often depicted as having vampiric traits such as preying on the living. The Lamashtu, a demoness from Sumerian mythology, was also said to prey on infants and pregnant women, a precursor to later vampire archetypes. Greek and Roman mythology. In Greek mythology, there were figures like the Lamia and Imbusa, female demons who seduced and consumed young men, often drinking their blood. The Strix, a nocturnal bird demon that feasted on human blood, was another precursor to vampire lore. In Roman culture, the Lamia was considered a supernatural creature who preyed upon children, while the Mormon was a creature that also drank blood. Slavic folklore. The vampire myth is most strongly associated with Slavic regions of Eastern Europe. In Slavic folklore, the Nosferatu, which means plague carrier in Romanian, was a being created when a person died and failed to be properly buried or underwent a tragic, violent death. The vampire would rise from the grave to prey on the living. Slavic vampires were typically described as bloated and ruddy, their bodies in a state of decomposition. They would drink blood to feed their life force. Romanian mythology. Perhaps the most famous vampire of all, Count Dracula, is rooted in Romanian mythology, particularly in the folklore of the Strigoi, the restless spirit of the dead. The Strigoi were believed to rise from the grave and seek out the living to drink their blood. The connection between vampirism and the region was solidified through Bram Stoker's Dracula, which incorporated elements of both historical figures like Vlad the Impaler and older Romanian folklore. Balkan mythology. In the Balkans, a vampire-like figure known as the vampire would often rise from the grave to terrorize the living. It was believed that a person who had lived a sinful life had been cursed in some way and will return as a vampire. The dead were often exhumed to check for vampiric signs like a bloated corpse, blood at the mouth, or a corpse that seemed unusually preserved. If these signs were found, the body would be destroyed through decapitation, staking, or burning. Common traits and characteristics of vampires. Though there are numerous variations across cultures, several common traits are often attributed to vampires. Immortality. Vampires are typically depicted as immortal beings unable to die of natural causes, though they may be vulnerable to certain forms of destruction, for example, sunlight, wooden stakes, and holy water. Blood drinking. The most essential characteristic of a vampire is its need to consume blood, often human blood, to sustain its immortality or to regain strength. Vulnerability to sunlight. In most vampire myths, exposure to sunlight is deadly to vampires, either destroying them or weakening them. Shape-shifting. Vampires are frequently depicted as capable of transforming into animals, most commonly bats, wolves, or mist, which allows them to move undetected. Hypnotic powers. Many vampire legends describe the vampires as possessing the ability to mesmerize or control the minds of their victims. Fangs. Sharp, elongated canine teeth are a key physical feature used to puncture the skin and drink the blood. Fear of religious symbols. Crosses, holy water, and other religious symbols are often said to repel vampires, which ties into the idea of the vampire being an unholy creature. Notable vampire legends and figures. First, Dracula, of course, or also known as Vlad the Impaler. The most famous vampire legend, Dracula, is based on a historical figure, Vlad III of Wallachia, also known as Vlad the Impaler. Vlad earned his notorious reputation for impaling his enemies, but Bram Stoker's novel, Dracula, blended this with vampire mythology, turning him into the archetypal undead villain. Stoker's Dracula popularized many aspects of modern vampire lore, such as the ability to turn into a bat and the vampire's fear of sunlight. The Strigoi. The Strigoi is a central figure in Romanian vampire lore. A Strigoi can be the restless spirit of a deceased person who rises from the grave, or a living person who practices dark magic. In some versions of the myth, a Strigoi can be reincarnated and continue to haunt his family. In Romanian villages, there are specific rituals to prevent the dead from becoming Strigoi, such as placing garlic or a piece of iron over the body during burial. The Asanbo Sam of West Africa. In West African folklore, the Asanbo Sam is a vampire-like creature that resides in the trees. It is often depicted as a man with iron teeth and hooks for feet, using these features to ensnare its prey. The Asanbo Sam is part of the rich vampire lore found throughout African mythologies. The Tung Shi of China. The Tung Shi is a type of reanimated corpse in Chinese folklore. Often translated as hopping vampire, the Tung Shi is a creature that comes back to life due to a malevolent force or an improper burial. The Tung Shi is said to drain the life force or qi from his victims rather than drink blood. It is often depicted as a stiff, hopping figure dressed in traditional Qing dynasty clothing. Vampires and their evolution in popular culture. While vampire lore has its ancient roots, it is in the last few centuries that the creature has evolved into the iconic figure known today. Slavic and Romanian folklore heavily influenced early depictions of vampires in Western literature. 18th to 19th century. The vampire gained prominence in Western literature with works like John Polidori's The Vampire in 1819 and Bram Stoker's Dracula 1897. These works gave shape to many of the vampire traits that are now considered classic, such as the aristocratic vampire and the vampire's predatory nature and its connection to death and immortality. In the 20th century, the vampire began to shift from a monster of horror to a more nuanced, often tragic figure. Films like Nosferatu in 1922 and later Interview with a Vampire in 1994 depicted vampires as complex creatures who struggle with their internal nature and predatory instincts. In the 21st century, In contemporary media, vampires have been reimagined in numerous ways, from the romanticized vampires of Twilight to the morally ambiguous vampires in True Blood. These modern vampires often reflect contemporary themes such as societal alienation, immortality, and the exploration of good versus evil. Themes and symbolism. Vampires have become symbolic of many cultural anxieties and themes. Fear of death. Vampires challenge the natural order of life and death, representing an unnatural prolongation of life. Sexuality. Vampires are often depicted as sexually charged figures, with their bite representing a form of seduction and consumption. This theme has been central in works like Dracula and Interview with the Vampire. Isolation and alienation. Vampires are often depicted as solitary beings, cursed to live forever and disconnected from humanity, which speaks to existential themes of loneliness and the alienation of immortality. The vampire myth has evolved dramatically over time, from an ancient creature of the night to a more complex symbol in modern culture. It reflects both fear and fascination with life, death, and the supernatural. That concludes this lore. If you like what you heard, please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next lore. Bye.